Hello, and welcome back to People's Perspective, where I believe everyone has a story. And today with us, we have a very, very special guest. Would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Larry Turkle. Uh, I'm an adjunct professor here at Kent State University, and I teach Intro to World Religion. And I was fortunate to have you in my class.
Well, I was very fortunate to attend your class. Before we get started, do I have your permission to both record and then later post this on YouTube?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I just want to get started by saying thank you so much, because I know probably a bit weird to get an email from a student from about 3 or 4 years ago saying, hey, would you please come onto my podcast? That's probably not something you see every day.
No, but I'm happy to help. It's great.
I'm very glad because, as I've mentioned to many people before, you were my inspiration for recording this podcast, listening to all your stories back in the class that you had to share about all your journeys throughout both like life and both pertaining to the class and just in general. It was very enthralling. I was always just like captivated with every word you said, just because I don't mean to come off like offensive by saying this. You don't seem like a very what's the word, like you don't. I didn't get from the initial interaction with you that you would be someone who would have like these amazing stories, but I think that just goes to show that anyone can have such amazing stories that like you would never expect to hear from them.
Agreed. And I don't mind telling you, I've had some amazing stories.
I am so glad to have you here to share those stories then, because like I said, I found they were amazing. And, I hope everyone listening is as enthralled as I was back then.
Well, I'm honored. Thank you.
So just to get started, do you have any interesting facts about yourself? Any just fun things about you to know?
First of all, I could give you a little overview and simply say that I teach here at Kent State University. I teach Intro to World Religion. I have had a long journey through multiple religious experiences. One of my core and favorite elements of my life is yoga. After college, I went to India on a one-way ticket, traveled for a year throughout, Israel, Africa, and India, and came back. I've been teaching yoga for over 50 years. I am one of the national masters swimming champions. You're talking to someone who holds 2 national records at the National Senior Olympic Games. At the last games, I won 7 gold medals in the 75 to 79 age group. So put that in some perspective. So yes, there is a lot here to mine, and let's get started.
Oh boy, where to start? Just in that there are 3 big things. Like, one, that you're teaching world religion, that you've gone through multiple kind of religious experiences on your own, and just to kind of come to where you believe. 2, you've been to India, which and you said Israel and stuff like that. That's insane. That's something that a lot of people haven't done. And then you've won 7 gold medals
at the last Senior Olympic Games. Yes. I was just at the Midwest Championships this past weekend where I won 4.
Only 4.
I actually lost 2 races to a national breaststroke champion. That breaststroke is not my freestyle and butterfly are my 2 main events, and I ran away with those. But I had a race in breaststroke, and I gave him a race, the national champion. So we had fun.
My goodness, that is a whole lot to unpack there in just a minute of stuff you said. That's just a ton of stuff that I'm sure a great majority of the population, I don't want to say the great majority of the population, but just a great majority of people, especially here in America, would never do or have never even thought about.
By the way, I've also written a best-selling book that has been published throughout the world, Japan, Italy, France, Korea. I had a great run with that as well.
I mean, I'm sure you don't need the advertisement from like 20 people who are going to see this, but what was the book you wrote? What was it called?
My bestseller is called Small Change. It's the little things in life that make a big difference. It was published by Penguin. It's 20 years ago now. It was 2004. Sat at the front of Barnes & Noble for 3 years. I had quite a run with it. It was great. And then I've also written a book on meditation, how to meditate, secrets to the easiest and most effective meditation technique.
All that just amazing. Wow. Like I said, I don't know where. I guess let's start with how was the what led you to stay in India?
Let me start with. I agree with you that everyone has a story, and really to really get to understand someone, there's always even a core story. There's a fork in the road. There's a chance meeting. There's a something that sets people on a journey. And for me, I would tell you this, that it happened at the age of 19 years old. I was a sophomore at Cornell University, studying engineering and business, and I was home on Christmas vacation when I learned I was adopted. My whole world changed. Everything I thought was real wasn't real. It was like the rug was pulled out from under me. It's kind of a funny story in the sense that my mother thought she had always told me. She read me a book called The Chosen Baby. The idea was that you weren't rejected, you were chosen. For adoptees, this is an interesting issue as to whether they feel rejected or grateful. Here's the problem. I loved the book. It was my favorite bedtime reading. But what 5-year-old knows where babies come from anyway? I thought everyone was chosen. I didn't get the fact that chosen meant adopted. It just went right over my head. And so we're in the passport office, and when you're adopted, you get a new birth certificate, and they seal the old one away in the court, and they issue a new one with your adoptive parents' names on it. And my parents always assumed that they changed the place of birth to Cleveland, Ohio, and I never questioned it. And we were in a passport office, and it was my turn, and the clerk said to me, "Where was I born?" And I said, "Cleveland, Ohio." And the clerk looked down at my birth certificate and said, "Why does this say Memphis, Tennessee?" And I kid you not, Ryan, in that moment, my very first thought, chosen must have meant adopted. It just hit me like a ton of bricks. And of course, I'm also standing there, 6'1". My mother was 4'11". My father was 5'5". They went on and had my sister and brother. They had to sit me down for all the family pictures, but I never knew I was adopted. That was a shock. And we went home, and I sat down with my mother, and first thing she said to me was, "I thought you knew. I read you that book." And I said, "Mom, I never got it." And then her way of letting me down easy, I was raised in a 3-generation household. My grandfather lived with us. He had just passed away the year before. And my mother's way of letting me down easy was to let me know she too was adopted. That wasn't her father. So we had 3 generations under one roof that weren't biologically related. It was her father emotionally and raised her, but and I count my parents as my parents, but biologically, none of us were related. And that was kind of what misled me also, because my grandfather was taller. So I always felt like I fit in somehow because he was there. But it set me on a journey. Then I had to go back to school with this heavy knowledge that I didn't know what to make of. And I had big questions. What was religion? How could I be so fortunate? I went to gratitude. One of my mantras was I could have been an orphan. How did I get so lucky? Is there a God? Did God have anything to do with this? What am I supposed to make of it? And these were really heavy questions for me. And I didn't know who to talk to about it either. And I didn't talk to anyone about it for a couple of years, actually. And then I was dating a girl, and it was getting serious. And I said to her, Susan, I have something really heavy to tell you. And let's go to dinner, I said. Drove her crazy all afternoon. She's thinking heart disease, cancer, diabetes, gay, something, who knows? I mean, and we get together, we go to sit down, she said, so what is it already? And I looked at her very seriously and I said, Susan, I'm adopted. She looked at me and said, wait, that's it? And it was like a balloon letting out its air. It was like, you mean it's not heavy? And the next thing out of her mouth was really classic. She said, that means if we were to have children, they can't look like your mother. Yes, that went from heavy to some of the best. Now, it's not like my mother was bad looking. But she was 4'11". She didn't look anything like me, and so it was. Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting news, and with that, she joined my journey. By the way, to what's the word? To give away the plot, let me just tell you that we celebrated our 54th wedding anniversary last year in October. So, yes. And so we went on a journey together. Who was I? What was this world about? Why was I adopted? There were so many questions. What was religion? Were the handcuffs off? I was raised in a Jewish family. But what did that mean? Is religion something you choose to believe in? Or is it something you're born into? Are you stuck? What's going on here? And that is, in a sense, the impetus for leaving on a one-way ticket to India. Now, there's another story. The story is that we're dating, and Susan sees a lecture. The speaker was coming to campus, a Swami. His name was Swami Satchidananda. Swami Satchidananda this is the 1960s, understand that. I lived in the 1960s. I'm in college from 1965 to 1970, the heart of the 60s. They teach that in the history department now, and I lived it. And Susan said to me she'd like to go to this lecture. This was about the last thing I would ever do. I was pretty straight. I was in engineering school, and I was planning on staying for my 5th year in business to get my MBA in 5 years. I was a poker player. I partied. That's a whole nother story. I was my girlfriend. Of course I'd go, right? And it changed my life completely. I mean, I went to a lecture and I met a man. Now, for me, first of all, I would tell you that there's a word in Sanskrit. It's one of my favorite words in all of language. The word is darshan. Darshan is a word that means, so I define it in terms of the 60s as contact high. Secondhand smoke. Figure out what I'm talking about. But anyway, the point is that darshan means to receive the presence, the inspiration, the energy, the high of being in the presence of a special person. It's often used in a spiritual context of a spiritual being. But if you were a golfer and you were in the presence of Tiger Woods, you might feel moved, and that's the word for darshan. Inspired, changed, like a charged battery charging an uncharged battery, and you go away different. And what he was talking about struck me as very practical. I was studying industrial engineering. Industrial engineering is where you learn how to make machines function well, efficiently, maintenance on them, and optimizing performance. And here was a man talking about making this body, this machine, function well through yoga. I just thought everything he was talking about was what I was learning. And it applied to us. And then, what am I learning in business school? In business school, you learn how to make good decisions. Clarity is required, seeing the market clearly. If you see it with bias, you are going to get into trouble. You need to be able to allocate scarce resources. This is challenging. And he was talking about making our mind clearer, function well, perform better. I said to Susan, I want what he's selling. And here's the deal. There was no yoga in the United States. I realize that's hard to believe today. It's on every street corner and in every adult ed class and libraries and sport and health clubs. Back then there was none. It was underground. It was weird. It was unusual. But I knew it was in India. And I said to Susan, I'm going to India after college. I'm going to learn what he was talking about. And Susan said she'd go with me. And we graduated and left on a one-way ticket to India. The plan was, not a plan I recommend, by the way. The plan was, go to India, look up yoga in the yellow pages. We didn't have social media back then. We didn't have phones in our pocket, computers. The computers were the size of buildings. We had yellow pages. And in every hotel you'd go, and there'd be a yellow pages. That's how you found a restaurant or anything. And so that was my model. That's what I thought I would do. Fate intervened again. I was picking up our visas in the Indian embassy when the woman in front of me in line, the clerk said to her, "Why are you going to India?" And the woman said, "I'm traveling with Swami Satchidananda," the only name I knew. By the way, just so you know, Swami Satchidananda is famous because the Woodstock album, the classic Woodstock album from the Woodstock Festival, is the back of Swami Satchidananda looking out from stage over 400,000 people. They flew him in by helicopter. He's the man who opened Woodstock. Brought to the United States by Peter Max, the artist. The Beatles brought the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Peter Max brought Swami Satchidananda. Here was this woman in front of me in line was his personal secretary. And I said to her, "Can we join you?" And she said, "Sure." How did I know him? I met him at Cornell. Susan and I joined. There were only about 8 of us. We had to make one change in one flight. We went on to Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka, an island off the southeast coast of India. He was actually from Ceylon, from Sri Lanka. And so I had to add a leg to our flight and change it by like one day. And we met up with him, and included with us, Susan and myself, Alice Coltrane. For those that know jazz, John Coltrane was a very famous jazz musician, and Alice, in her own right, was also famous back then. Alice brought her harp all the way to Ceylon. And back in the 60s, there were 3 major anti-war folk singers, Joan Baez, Judy Collins, and Laura Nyro. People don't realize Laura wrote a lot of the songs, and Laura was with us. Laura, Alice, Susan, and myself, Swami Satchidananda, 2 or 3 other people, the secretary, and 2 or 3 other people. And every day for a month, this was our immersion into yoga, the very first month of our trip. Swami Satchidananda taught us yoga and meditation in the mornings. We'd be free after lunch to practice, study, read. We'd get back together for dinner. He would answer any question we had. We were on a tea plantation in Kandy, Ceylon, where they bathed the elephants in the river after they worked in the jungles during the day. Lush green tea country. And after dinner, Alice would play her harp and Laura would sing. It was amazing. It was paradise. It was my immersion into yoga. There was no yellow pages. It would have been a really bad idea. But after that month, Swami Satchidananda went on east through Asia and on back to the United States. He gave us a letter of introduction and a list of masters all over India. We traveled the length and breadth of India studying yoga and meditation. Came back through, we had spent 2.5 months in Israel. We spent another month and a half in Africa, some more time in Israel on our way home because we were coming and going, and some time in Europe, and finally made it home. But magical. And I would tell you, Ryan, elements of that trip I remember every single day of my life. Some of his teachings. Afterwards, he said to me, "Larry, go teach." I came back to the United States, and I started teaching yoga in 1971. And that really changed my life. You asked.
Yeah, I am speechless. We are 23 minutes in, and I think that is possibly one of the most real life magical, beautiful stories I have ever heard. I mean, that's just how the stars had to align for everything to just go the way that it did. And
I have a teaching though. It opens my book on meditation. There's a major Eastern saying, and the saying goes, "When the student is ready, the master appears." Most people don't understand that saying. Most people think they're waiting for the master to appear, the relationship that will change their life, the pill that will help them lose weight, the doctor that will take away their disease, the spiritual healer that will zap them on the forehead and take away all their suffering. That is not the wisdom of the saying. The key word in the saying is the word ready. When the student is ready, the master appears. What does it take to be ready? I'm sorry to say that the most popular way to be ready is suffering. People don't often change until they hit rock bottom. They continue doing what they've always done because it's familiar. Abuse repeats. Addictions repeat. It's a cycle of just repetition. And what is the difference between the last cigarette and the second last cigarette, or the change? And it's all the ones that came before it. It's what makes us ultimately ready. There's a Buddhist parable about pull a silk scarf through a rock once every 100 years. Eventually, there will be a last pull, and it will make its way through it will cut its way through the rock. Just an image of readiness. And I guess you could say that my adoption story is what made me ready. It opened me to a world of possibility. It took me out of everything I expected into a world of questions. That's what a quest is, searching for answers to questions. And Swami Satchidananda showed up. Just a series of teachers in my life have shown up. I guess you could simply say I was ready. And I look back on it and realize how ready I was.
I would imagine also it takes at least some form of like vulnerability to, like, you have to be vulnerable in those instances that I feel like most people probably aren't willing to feel.
I don't, it's funny, if I look back on it, you could say maybe I was stupid. I mean, look, my mother was ready to kill me. You go to India on a one-way ticket in 1970, without cell phones, without email, no way to contact me, snail mail to American Express offices that take 2 weeks to get there or something. I mean, it was, my mother was not happy. She was a worrisome Jewish mother. And I don't know. It felt like what I needed to do. Not sure vulnerable. Clearly I was vulnerable after, with the heaviness of understanding who I was, so to speak. But I was ready for answers. I was ready to try something new. I wasn't scared. It's what I needed to do. And so I'm not sure how else to describe it that way. So,
No, I mean, I feel like it makes sense to me. I mean, I guess all I mean is you can't come out with a very like rigid structure. You have to be able to allow things to happen in a way. I guess, like you said, be very ready for maybe what life has to offer.
Yeah. I was cooked and ready. The adoption story, I can't emphasize enough what a turning point that was. It just, when I say the rug was pulled out from under me, I really, everything I thought was real seemed like an illusion. I mean, and that's been an ongoing journey. Who am I, so to speak?
Yeah, I guess the only question I have with that is, where did that all leave you after the year-long journey? When you came back, how did you feel?
So there are lots of stories on the trip itself, but we came home. We came home when we were ready. We were saturated to a great extent. We were clear about one thing, and understand kind of just kind of the background of that trip is that a lot of swamis. Swami is a term for a Hindu priest, basically. It's a representative of Hinduism. The word guru means teacher. A teacher, Swami may be a guru may be a Swami, but they're not necessarily identical. Every Swami's not a guru, and every guru is not a Swami. But the model back then were monks. Susan and I were getting married. Susan and I were planning on having a family. We weren't following the renunciate path, which is a way of saying kind of the path of a monk, that renouncing materialism or renouncing attachments and dedicating themselves to spiritual or service pursuits. In yoga terms, Susan and I were householders as opposed to monks. And we came back to have our life. And I started teaching yoga. And there's a funny anecdote that I was very serious. My yoga practice, so when I came back from India, I was meditation and yoga. I was working, but I had a practice in the morning. When I came home from work, I had a practice. I joke that I became very inflexible in my pursuit of flexibility because everyone had to cooperate. God forbid the phone rang. I'm practicing. And then our first child arrived. That changed a lot. Picture coming home from work, your wife saying, "Here, you take him," and me saying, "Oh, I have a practice to do." This is not going to fly, right? This was, and so it lightened up my practice. Actually, it's really important transition at the time. I took my practice into the living room. I did it with my child. He would crawl under the down dog as a tunnel or climb up on my back in a forward bend, and just I had to lighten everything up, and I teach a very fun style of yoga still to today. And then at 18 months old, our son came down with a rare nerve disease. All of a sudden, this active 18-month-old who had been running around since he was 9 months old started falling and couldn't stand up. It's an ascending paralysis. The name is Guillain-Barré syndrome. People have heard that name now because of vaccination. Sometimes it's a minor, a rare problem with vaccinations. It's when the lining of the nerves gets attacked and the nerve impulse doesn't get to the muscle, so to speak. So it's not nerve damage; it's nerve lining damage, and he was paralyzed from the neck down. We were in intensive care for 3 weeks, and the first 3 days were torture. And I had absolutely no medical information. And then don't get between a mother and her child when something like that's going on. First of all, those 3 weeks changed our life too. I mean, when you're immersed in that environment, one of the biggest questions in religion is, why do bad things happen to good people? And when you spend 3 weeks at Rainbow Babies and Children's in Cleveland, in the intensive care ward, what did they do? I mean, your faith can easily be tested. it doesn't compute. And he survived. The dangers of Guillain-Barré is that it's an ascending paralysis up the nervous system. If it hits I forget what number, 9th cranial nerve or 6th, the one that controls breathing, that's when it gets life-threatening. Then you need to be either intubated or on an iron lung back there. Back then it was, but his stabilized right before it, and then it goes down slowly. It was a 6-month ordeal that we went through. He is now 51 years old and became a ski racer. He has very poor handwriting, some very fine motor coordination, as he doesn't have a reflex in his knee, but he survived and has been absolutely great. And trust me, if you're a child that wants to be spoiled, go through that. You will, because it has never crossed. We have never forgotten how fortunate we feel to have come through that with him.
I would have to imagine. I mean, there's absolutely nothing I can say that can there's nothing I can say that really
No.
on the situation besides just
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that with me. I mean,
For parenting, in a parenting situation, that was a key experience for sure. He got better, and Susan went on a mission to find my medical information and my natural mother. There was no internet. 1970s, mid-70s. She went to a private investigator, and the private investigator said, "You can't afford this. It's so time-consuming." But he said to her, "Here's what I'll do for you. You do all the legwork. I'll point you in the right direction. I'll mentor you." And for 2 years, it took Susan 2 years of some private investigator tricks and some, he ended up licensing her as a private investigator, actually. We uncovered my mother in Memphis, Tennessee, and I reached out to her. This is not a good story, just so you know. Spoiler alert. She acknowledged I had one conversation with her in my life. And in that brief conversation, she told me that she knew she had sinned. She asked God for forgiveness. She gave birth to me out of wedlock. Before she got married, she told her future husband and asked his forgiveness. And now that I had found her, she was asking me for forgiveness. Like I wasn't going to forgive her, right? I mean, I'm here, and she didn't have an abortion, and so I'm grateful. And then she said, "But I have no responsibility to you." And her husband snatched the phone away from her, threatened an injunction, told me never to bother them again, and hung up the phone. I never got the medical information. I did get confirmation that I had the right person. And the question was, felt like a dead end. And then I had a breakthrough. I had an insight about 4 months later. It's partly how I teach meditation. And that's that you can get messages in meditation. Messages, teachings, guidance, insight. It's why I meditate. I don't meditate for peace. Peace is easily procrastinated. But messages and teachings, I teach my class from out of meditation. You don't realize that, Ryan, but that's where a lot of the insights come from. I ponder a question. I have it. There's a whole method to it. There's some classical meditation teachings in my book, but when I say it's the most effective, it's because it guides my life. And about 4 months later, I got a message in meditation. In the file that Susan had liberated from Tennessee was about an inch thick. In the lower right-hand corner of one page, it said, my Aunt Helen, my mother's sister Helen, had brought her to the home for unwed mothers. And my insight in meditation, I came out of meditation and said to Susan, Susan, let's find my aunt. Her name is Helen. She knows I was born. She won't have the emotional baggage. And we could get medical information. And it took 2 more years because of name change, because of maiden name and no internet and running her down. And we found my aunt, and that was the treasure trove. That was, we went down to Tennessee. Great story. We go to Tennessee, and my aunt takes me to meet my grandmother. Her mother, we were in Jackson, Tennessee, halfway between Nashville and Memphis. My mother's pregnancy was a scandal, so they sent her to Memphis to give birth, and in fact, she ended up staying there, but the family was in Jackson, Tennessee. And I went to see my grandmother, and when I walked in, I'm going to get emotional. When I walked in, my grandmother looked at me and said, whenever anyone asks me how many grandchildren I have, I've always said 16. And I've always thought to myself, +1. I knew you were out there. I've been praying for you all these years. I am so relieved to find out that it all worked out. And we spent a magical weekend with a shoebox full of photographs of my mother growing up. I learned I had 3 half-brothers. I learned all about the family, and she gave me pictures. There's another great story. Shoebox full of pictures. If I looked at one twice, my grandmother would push it my way, saying, "Here, you take it." Out of that whole box, there was one photograph that just spoke to me. And she didn't push it right away. I engineered it out of the finished pile back in, and maybe she thought there were multiples. I don't know. All I know is she said I could have it. It was a Polaroid picture of my mother with her brother and her brother's date, the 3 of them, sitting at a table in a restaurant. Back then, someone would have a Polaroid camera and sell photographs. They would come around, take your picture at the table, and sell you the photograph for 50 cents or whatever it was. It was a service. And that's what this was. It was obvious that was what this was. And there was a little sign on the table that said the name of the restaurant, the Lakeview. And I thought my mother looked beautiful. That picture just was magical. And she ended up giving us about, 15 pictures or so. We go back to the hotel room. I gave Susan the other 14, and I stared at that picture for 20 minutes. And then I realized, but you had to look really closely, that on the card sitting on the table that gave the name of the restaurant, there was a date, barely readable. I was born 8 months and 1 day later, I'm in that picture. My mother in that picture probably doesn't even realize she's pregnant yet. that is my magical picture of my mother that I got from my grandmother. Ryan, after the podcast, I'll show you the picture. I keep it on my phone. It's, yeah, magical, just magical.
Once again, you've just left me speechless. This story, I mean.
Yeah. Didn't know what you were getting today, did you, Ryan?
I mean, no, I mean, I remembered you talk about going to India with, I can't remember his actual name, but I remember his title being like the Woodstock Guru.
Yeah.
And I remember that, and I remember certain other stories, and I did.
Yeah.
Now that you
they
said
related to your class.
Yeah, now that I said it, I remember you talking about being the senior Olympic swimmer and getting gold medals for that. But wow, I mean, that's.
So, postscripts to that story. I stayed in touch with my grandmother for a couple of years, and then she passed away. My aunt was the oldest of about 7 children. That my mother had brothers and sisters, and she was the oldest because she's the one that took her younger sister to the home. She passed away maybe about 10 years later. This was 1978 that we went down to Tennessee. In 2002, about 25 years later, I wrote to my mother. I said, couldn't you just tell me who my father was? My aunt and her mother, my grandmother, worked on my mother. You should meet him. He's nice. She would not, and they worked on her for me. Who was my father? That was the other half of the equation, of the question. And she wouldn't tell them. I wrote her, I said, I have honored your wishes. I haven't bothered you for 25 years. Couldn't you just tell me who my father was? She wrote back a very terse note, the only other communication I've had, in which she wrote, I didn't tell you 25 years ago. I'm not telling you today. Do not bother me 25 years from now. And that's the end of the story with my biological mother. I learned later that she had passed away. This is now fast forward to about I think she passed away maybe around 2010, but I wasn't trolling her. I didn't know. I guess we looked haphazardly in about 2018 and saw that she had passed away. And I said to Susan, let's contact my brothers. The promise is off. I said I wouldn't bother anyone. But she's gone. And I picked up the phone and called the oldest of the 3 half-brothers. His name was Ron. I introduced myself, surprise, you have a half-brother, right? He's not quite a minister, but he's a deacon in his church. He's very religious in Memphis, Tennessee. And he learned his mother wasn't a virgin. Came as a shock. He learned that he had a half-brother who was a little weird, clearly out of his comfort zone, raised in a Jewish family, teaching yoga and meditation, teaching world religion at Kent State University, not exactly espousing there's only one way. And to his credit, he was willing to entertain a meeting. If I ever got down there, if he ever came up, well, he would get together with me. And so the next year we planned a trip, and we went down, not sure what we were going to get, redneck, who knew? We made a 2:30 appointment after lunch, before dinner. We could get out in an hour. We had to get back to Cleveland. And to make a long story short, at 1 o'clock in the morning, we were still talking. And we stayed over. His wife had passed away the year before. We have developed a very nice friendship. He's been very interesting. I'll tell you one cute anecdote in which he said to me, at one point, since I'm teaching world religion, at about 1 o'clock in the morning, he says to me, Larry, looked me right in the eye, he said, Larry, who do you think Jesus was? I looked him right back in the eye and said, Ron, I think he's the Son of God. And he looked at me like, wait a minute, you're saying that? And then I said to him, like all of us, Ron, you know, the prayer he gave us at the Sermon on the Mount doesn't start with my Father. It starts with our Father. And he looked at me and said, I'm going to have to think about that. And we've been talking about it ever since. It was a great evening. We went back a month later. He called a reunion of the whole family. He brought the other two brothers in, their kids. I flew my daughter in from Oregon, and we had an amazing family reunion at a national campground in outside of Memphis. That was great. And then we couldn't go back. COVID hit when we were going to go back again, and then we've been back a couple of times since, and we've developed a very nice friendship. In terms of my father, actually, we had at the reunion, we thought maybe their father was my father. Maybe, you know, they'd given me up and then they got married or something. And but they did 23andMe, and they were only half brothers. And so I was still stymied. And a colleague here at Kent State, on a snow day, about 3 years ago, said to me, she was into genealogy and genetics, so to speak, and she said, could I take a crack at figuring out who your father was? And I gave her the password to my 23andMe, and I gave her what little with the names I knew from the birth, from the file. And in one day, she called me up and said, I think I found your father. What they do is they look for, and through the genetic website, you find a third, fourth, fifth cousin, whatever, on that side, and you merge it with a genealogical website that has family trees, and it's called Triangulate. Who must we have in common? And so you go back 2 generations or whatever it is, even though you don't have DNA, you have the chart, and you get candidates, so to speak, of who's possible. And then you do some research, and she decided she had found my father, and he had two daughters. I called the oldest one up, surprise, you have a half brother. and she was thrilled. We had a great conversation. She told me if her father was my father, he was great. He had passed away. And I said, the only way we're going to find out is if you take the test. So I sent them 23andMe tests, and it came back that she was my first cousin, which meant it was her father's brother. So we were able to figure out exactly. My friend had eliminated him because he was 10 years older and married. That's my father. And he didn't have any kids. So the truth is I haven't found a lot of information out. I've been down, I've visited my cousins, and there's a postscript to that story. I'm responsible for this, by the way. 2 sisters in their 60s. They take the 23andMe test that I sent them, and they find out they're only half sisters. Their mother had an affair. They didn't share the same. The younger sister isn't my cousin because we don't. The father is not my uncle. She came back not related to me, and so now I called them wondering who my father was. Now the younger sister says to me, "Well, who's my father?" She's not, and I reassured her that the father that raised her is her father, because that's exactly how I feel about my parents. Mm-hmm. She suspected the next door neighbor, and the next door neighbor's daughter was her best friend. They went all the way through college together. So she called her best friend and said, "Would you take the test?" Her best friend's her half-sister. Stories from 23andMe. Stories from the genetic research.
My goodness, what a way to find out that you're not related to your sister, because your potential half-brother, who turns out to be your cousin, has you take a DNA test, finds out you're not related to him,
That was well put, right?
takes a DNA test of your best friend, turns out she's your half-sister.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And her father was going back and forth over the backyard fence.
I say family tree. This is more like a family spider web with all these weird connections. And
trust me, there's a lot of stories going on with the Ancestry.com and 23andMe.
I have to imagine.
A lot of surprises out there. A lot. Yeah. Yeah. So that's you really are homing in on my whole life story here. It was a long story. I, in effect, finally learned who I was, both biologically and emotionally. Certainly my family is my family, and my brother and sister, or my brother and sister, we get together once a month still to this day. Although the joke is that my younger brother calls me the chosen one. And I would simply, last story I think I'll bother you with today is the swimming story. And that is that I still teach yoga. I still do yoga. I have yoga videos on YouTube that have like 500,000 views on YouTube. Headstand and a variety of interesting. If you're interested, take a look at them. I roll my stomach. I swam in high school because I loved swimming, but I wasn't very good. I filled out some relays. I didn't swim for 40 years. I did yoga. At the age of 60, I came back to swimming. I came back to swimming because I saw a sign in a Speedo store that said, "Sale optical goggles, $15." I said, "What's an optical goggle?" When I swam in high school, there were no goggles. We swam without goggles. It's how we raced. It's how we practiced. I hated that. I had to put drops in my eyes. It was, I'm 60 years old. I went in and asked, "What's an optical goggle?" I also wear glasses. I don't have good eyesight, so I couldn't see either. And they said it's vision-corrected goggles, and it's like reading glasses. Really, for eyes as bad as mine? And she gave me some goggles to look through. I could see. They weren't perfect, they didn't correct for astigmatism or any of that stuff, but they were a lot better than nothing. I bought those goggles, and it got me back in the water. And after 40 years of yoga, I joked that swimming is yoga in the water. Everything I did in swimming, I do in yoga. In yoga, I do in swimming. Flexibility, alignment, breathing, knowing where your body parts are, mindfulness, awareness of your environment, the water, the feel of the water. It's all yoga. I got back in the water in my 60s and swam faster than high school after 40 years of yoga. And then I got some coaching, and I learned some technique, and that brings you up to the medals I just won this weekend. The 7 gold medals I won. I have snuck up on everyone. I swim against NCAA champions. I swim on a relay with an Olympic gold medalist, and I was a terrible swimmer in high school. And they'll say to me, I come to a swim meet now because those of us that are know each other, and they'll say, Larry, seriously, we're all getting slower. What are you doing? And I tell them 2 things. Yoga. It's all yoga. And I'm still learning how to swim. I'm still refining technique. They all had it from back in college. They're slowing down, and I'm catching them. And like I said, I now hold 2 national records in the 75 to 79 age group for the 50 and 100 freestyle. I'm very fast. I don't go long. When the going gets tough, the sprinters get out. That's what I do, and I'm having a great time with it. Just a great time with it.
That's amazing. That's wonderful.
So that's what you got out of me, Ryan. You got my adoption story, my India story, my finding my natural parents, and how I got into swimming. Is that enough for one podcast?
Oh, that's more than enough. I mean, I can't believe we've fit it all in just an hour. I mean, again, thank you so much for one, just coming onto this podcast, period. I greatly appreciate it. And 2, sharing all this information about you. I mean,
Look, it was a pleasure to do it. And let me also tell you why, and I think it's really part of your podcast goals anyway. It's not just my story. It's the fact that, I'll tell you what it really is. There's more going on than meets the eye in everyone. Everyone has a story. Everyone has problems they've overcome, issues they've had to deal with. One of the things I like to say is we're all heroes in our own story. And I want people to know they're the hero in their story. Too often we put ourselves down because we hear about someone else's success or whatever, and we think everything that everyone deals with in this life, this is not an easy place. You have not come to Disneyland. This is a challenging place where we are constantly challenged. And you want to be inspired? Inspire yourself. Give yourself credit for everything you've overcome so far. Don't worry that something's going to get you around the corner. Give yourself credit. Go around that corner with confidence. Hear some of these stories. It's not about me. It's about you and what you can do with your life by opening to new ideas, by trying new things, by going off in different directions. You know, all my friends thought I was crazy. Crazy. Yoga, India. I've been vegetarian for 54 years. It was underground back there. My mother thought I was going to die. Now they all look at me and say, how did you know? They're falling apart. And I'm setting national records. This is, listen. Pay attention. Don't be afraid to change. Go off in new directions. Follow your passion. If you have a message to do it, listen. Listen. If I inspire anyone, that's great. But not everyone's adopted. Not everyone. We all translate that to your own issues, your own challenges, family situations that need to be overcome. personal issues. Shortfalls are just opportunities. Be the hero in your story. Claim that title. Go for it.
Thank you. I think that's a lovely message to end on. I think that's very, for lack of a better word, inspiring and very just heartwarming. And I do believe that's true. It is. Everyone is the hero in their own story, and that's why I love this podcast, because I get to hear about people being the hero in their own story, because I think that's important too. And I don't know. I don't got the words, but thank you so much. And just to end it off, do I have your permission to have recorded everything up to this point and post this on YouTube?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.